But I want to get back to one thing here involving structure. Now, in 1984, in July 24th, the object was seen over 3 counties, Putnam County in New York, Dutchess County in New York, and Westchester County in New York. And actually, it was also seen in Connecticut, 4 counties. But at 10:20, the object was videotaped in Brewster, New York. And this was the really first high-resolution video we got of the object. 15 minutes later, the object was headed to the west. It approached the Indian Point nuclear reactor. And it was witnessed by 12 New York State Power Authority police officers. These are like people who were once state cops. They were in the military. This is a military establishment in reactor number 3.
These are sharp folks.
These are sharp folks. When they saw this object coming, they went on alert. Because their first impression was that it was a very large aircraft coming into collision course with the reactor. So as the object came closer and closer, they realized that it wasn't a conventional aircraft. They tried to get clearance on what was going on. By that time, the object came over and hovered around right above reactor number 3, the only reactor that was in operation at the time. These officers got under the object, and they were on the nearby roofs of the building, the reactor area. They reported that this object was enormous, bigger than a football field, covered the entire sky, and underneath it was made of some dark gray metal with circular areas under the bottom large enough to fit cars in. And the object, there was no sound. And what happened next is that, well, it's a controversy. I mean, what happened next is that the commander gave the order to shoot the object down.
Okay. Here we
And
go.
they came out with the weapons, and they have air support from Camp Smith. And for some reason, the commander got a call and said, don't do anything. One officer pulled out his gun and was going to fire in the thing just to see if he hears a ping,
A handgun.
Yeah, and he tried to put it back in his case because he figured that, may make him mad.
Yeah, he'd hear a ping bouncing off the force field, probably.
Or something. I don't know. But at that time, the security around the reactor shut down. They were videotaping this object from the security console, and the person in the console who I talked to said he had to pan the camera like 180 degrees to get the entire object in. Now, what happened the next day is that all of those officers were called in to work early, and some people came in with, plain clothes, identifying themselves as Colonel so-and-so, the leader. They took all the radio communications, all the tape, the videotape from the surveillance tape, and the commander went around and debriefed all his people and said, nothing happened.
Jeez. Typical.
Now, later on, I was investigating this case, and I already talked to 12 of the police officers, of the security officers there.
Did they recant?
Actually, they went silent later on. But you see, before they were told to really clam up and say nothing, I was meeting with them secretly at places like, out-of-the-way places away from the reactor area, and it was a whole cloak and dagger thing. I mean, it was very exciting, but it was great information. And the things that they told me with this object, I mean, it was just a fabulous documentation. But what happened is that later on, the sighting made the newspapers. Okay, the Westchester Gannett papers.
What took them so long, Phil?
What's that?
What took it so long?
Well, what took you so long is that you have to realize that I was getting calls from the New York State Power Authority. I was getting calls from the governor's office in New York that they said that they knew that these police officers, these security officers have talked to me, and they said they told me things that violated the security of the reactor, and if I released them, I could come under charges.
They're
you know that
threatening.
they were calling my school and having my supervisors try to put pressure on me to keep quiet.
Did they try to put pressure on you?
Yes, they did. I mean, I got all these official notices from the New York Power Authority and the governor's office in New York, and telling me that reactor number 3 is a security area, and I was told things that would violate their security, and I could be brought up on charges. So John Fuller, I told John Fuller this, and John Fuller was dead set against the reactors. He said, ignore them. He said, they're just a bunch of, they'll threaten you left and right and so on. So what happened is that I released the story to the newspapers, and I figured that may be the best move. But I released the story to the newspaper about a month after the sighting. And, of course, reporters are going to get on something like this. It's going to be something very hot story for them.
Sure.
So they called Indian Point and talked to Carl Patrick and gave him the information, and there was so much documentation that there was a UFO over the reactor because people saw it from the outside, police officers saw it from the outside. Carl Patrick, who was the spokesman for the reactor, said he confirmed the sighting. And he said, but in no way was the reactor, the plant, compromised. And the reporter asked him, did they fire upon the object? And he said, I will not confirm or deny if they fired upon the object, but they did what was necessary to protect the plant. This is one of the only cases in history in which a UFO was documented and confirmed as being over a nuclear reactor.
Other than Chernobyl, wasn't there one on Chernobyl after the fact?
Well, there could have been, yes, but within the United States I'm talking about.
Oh, okay.
But you see, later on, none of the security officers would talk about the sightings again. And
you mean their whole mood changed, didn't it?
Well, they just 6 of them got an early retirement, and